Welcome to the Special Ed Strategist, where your special education questions meet expert answers. I'm your host, Wendy Taylor, a certified educational therapist, special educator, and your go-to special ed strategist. Here to collaborate with families to access special education services, ignite student potential, and erase learning gaps. Together, we'll unlock the services and support your kiddo's needs to thrive. Let's get started. Today's episode is brought to you by Learning Essentials and our Cracking the Code to Special Education eligibility course. Empower your advocacy, erase confusion, and unlock the services your kiddo deserves. Learn more at learningessentialsedu.com. Hello, and welcome to the Special Ed Strategist Podcast. I am so thrilled to have you join us today, Susanna, and to kind of talk about your journey and your experience. So thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you bet. Can you just share a little bit about who you are and your background and kind of what leads us up to our conversation that we're going to have today?
Yeah, sure. My name is Susanna Peace Lavelle. I am an author. I'm a speaker. I'm a life coach. I am an advocate for my beautiful and amazing disability community. This is also my lived experience as I am raising a daughter who is now a legal adult. She just turned 18 with myriad disabilities and diagnoses. And so I just am sort of like living and working and breathing in the same space all the time. And I'm grateful, and it has been a very unexpected life, but I'm here and I'm so happy to be of service.
I'm glad that we can have this talk because it is a unique experience to be such a strong advocate that you are and to kind of balance this out with what you were not expecting earlier in life. So before we kind of learn a little bit more about how this journey is taken you with twists and turns, what is a little known fact that or hobby or something about yourself that people may not know?
Yeah. So actually, I never talk about this, but it's a very big part of my life. I am a avid tennis player. So I feel like it's important, and it does sort of go hand in hand with my life and my living because it is a very therapeutic activity for me. There's something, that proprioceptive input is, whacking that ball over the net, sometimes into the net, sometimes off the court, doesn't matter. It's just moving my body and having something to hit for me is so non-negotiable. So that is something I do multiple times a week. I have hitting partners. I play matches. I'm just joined this adult league. So it's really fun. Wherever I can sort of fit it in, that is my go-to number one thing to do.
It's so important, right? Because I feel like it just clears your head. Whatever the activity is, clears your head. Sometimes you're thinking about work. Sometimes you're thinking about life. I'm a walker, and sometimes I'll still have my AirPods in, but no sound. It's just kind of just like in my head. So it's just a movement to move your body and kind of have something to yourself or communal with friends. And we all need that, right?
Yes, absolutely. And that's why I was saying it's non-negotiable for sure.
Yeah, that's right. You're just a happier person. It's so good.
Yes.
You wrote a book, Your True Self is Enough. And in that, you share your journey from pregnancy to navigating with life with your daughter's unique challenges. Can you just kind of walk us through that experience, just kind of from when it all started?
Yeah, sure. Well, I will say, I have one daughter. I wanted many, 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 many children. So, my book starts off with actually, my pregnancy, sort of, my journey and quest to becoming a mother. I was, so obsessed with becoming a mother. And so I had my daughter, and I will say that the journey really started like the second that she was born, because she just commanded so much attention from the second that she just came into this world. And I'm sure that's not a unique experience. I'm sure most people feel that way. And especially it's so beautiful to hear your baby screaming loudly as soon as they're born, right? We want that to be the case. It's just that she never really stopped crying, and she was crying and miserable and uncomfortable, so much more beyond wanting to eat or needing her diaper changed. It was really next level. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that my daughter, whose name is Arizona, cried for the first 18 months of her life. And so that was sort of my beginning, welcome to motherhood, Susanna. Isn't this what you wanted? And so, hence, began this long sort of circuitous up and down journey of just understanding all of my child's unique needs. And it started with allergies, and that moved to asthma, and then that moved to, other interesting side effects medically for her, physically for her body. Eczema she was covered head to toe in eczema. And, it wasn't until she was almost 2 that, her skin started to clear up, and we had a better, handle on all of the different, foods that she was allergic to. And that's when I first started noticing differences in her development in terms of like just comparing to other kiddos around us. I mean, I think for the first 18 months to 2 years, I was just so focused on her physical health needs, and I wasn't paying attention to anything else. So yeah, it has been a nonstop roller coaster. And I'm so grateful to be here with you today, Wendy, because there were many times that I was just like, I'm not sure I can survive today. Not sure.
Yeah. And in those moments, it feels dark, right? And and it's hard as that parent heart of fear and love. And then you see other families or caregivers with their little babies, and your experience is so different that it really then plays into just how you're feeling and how you go about the day and interact with the world.
Yes. I mean, I mean, dark it barely scratches the surface. It's like this debilitating, endless abyss of just misery. And you're so right. It's like compounded by being out in the world and sort of seeing what everyone else's experience is and realizing that is not my experience, and feeling so guilty and horrible that I'm not, ecstatic every second with my newborn baby, being a mother. Again, like literally my lifelong dream has always been to be a mother. And so I just felt so like guilty and ashamed that I could not access joy. And I really literally was like, I am miserable. And that's how I felt. And I was so, trying to, be grateful for everything that I did have, and be so present in each moment. And it was really challenging to access that, and especially in those early days.
Was there one thing, a specific moment in those early days that kind of was almost a light bulb moment? Or was it probably just a compilation of moments that you were like, okay, this is what we need to do next? Because I think it's really hard to go when you're in that caregiver role. It's very different almost than a parent in terms of when it's so every day, every second.
Yeah, well, I believe that everything is absolutely for us, for our opportunity to grow and awaken and transform, especially the uncomfortable and the hard. And so when I look back now, I fell into this very debilitating episode of postpartum anxiety and depression, certainly hormonal related, certainly circumstantially because of what was going on in my life. And I had never felt so out of control in my entire life. And I think that I had to hit sort of rock bottom, like literally fall to my knees and just cry out like, I can't do this. I need help. And I am not a person who is comfortable asking for help. I am very, very capable. I'm very resourceful. I absolutely need help. I just, it's so hard for me to ask for it. It's almost like I feel ashamed that I can't do something on my own. And so I have always been this sort of independent, even to this day. My dad is like, you're my most capable daughter. And I'm like, yeah, I don't want to be, you know what I mean? That's not the, badge of that I want on my back. Like, I want to be able to soften and, ask for help, receive help, understand what sort of help I need. And so I feel like that was really impactful and transformational because I couldn't do it on my own. Literally, I literally was like, I'm about to check myself into a hospital, but I have this, baby that I need to care for. So I need to ask for help. And so that to me was just a very, very important happening in my life. It was like a milestone, really, for me. And, that began the journey of just seeking out, ways in which I could feel supported by others and to actually ask for it. So again, it was the scariest time of my life. And out of that birthed this newfound understanding and tool of knowing that I'm not alone, really. At the end of the day, I can always reach out and seek help. Not sure from where and how, but I know that's possible.
Yeah, I was just going to say how did you find your people, your group? But you're right that it can change based on Arizona's needs or based on your needs. And you have a core group, but then sometimes you have to reach outside of that to find families and professionals that, are familiar with what you're experiencing so that you're not recreating the wheel.
Yes. And I will say, even though Arizona is, I guess, only 18, I mean, she's a young adult now, but when she was diagnosed with autism, and even before then with, all of the food allergies that she started off life with, I didn't know anyone who had, kiddos who had unique needs. I literally didn't. I mean, I think I knew some people who, oh yeah, your kid has a peanut allergy or something, which by the way is also so challenging. And I did not know one other family dealing with autism or any sort of special need or disability, not one. And so I really was like, am I an island? Now I feel like there are, so many more resources and we're talking about it more. There's so much support. I mean, the work that you do, Wendy, like it's just I'm so grateful. And back then it was like, okay, who, hello out there, So I just kind of started off there, like, what do I say? I just started talking about it, like, I don't know what's going on. Something's going on. Somebody help me,
So I don't know kind of how many, like when I first had our first baby, I was one of the youngest cousins. I didn't really babysit. So it was very new. So my question is, did you have some sort of background in this sense? And kind of how does that change when you're looking at your parenting style is very different. The way we parent some of our kiddos needs to be different because their needs are different.
Right. Yeah. Well, again, I thought I was the expert actually going in because I have a lot of siblings, there were 5 of us growing up and I was number 2. And so I took care of my younger siblings. In fact, my youngest sister was born when I was 13. So she was my little baby. I took her everywhere with me, and I just was like, this is so easy. I mean, it's the big deal. Like, and so I did babysit a lot. I was with children a lot and I loved them. I loved being with them, And so I just felt like I'm very armed with the tools that I need to be a very successful mother, and yet, and still, I felt like a failure every single day, every moment when my child was, crying and screaming and another rash would pop up or whatever it was, just feeling like, okay, I don't know how to take care of this child. I have to learn from scratch, literally, how to help advocate, support this child that came through me.
How did you start to come in terms of preschool, kindergarten, like that educational part, right? How did you start to learn about that process, navigate that process? What was your experience?
Yeah, so I was very naive back then. So when I started noticing there were some differences with Arizona's development, she was around 2-ish. And when she was around 2.5, I was like, well, maybe I just need to socialize her a little bit. And there was this, preschool that was literally walking distance from our condo at the time. And I was like, maybe I should just enroll her, for like 2 mornings a week just to be around some other kiddos. And the reason why I was so excited about this particular preschool is that they didn't have like a potty training, sort of mandate. And Arizona, by the way, was not potty trained at all at the time, like not even close. And in fact, she wasn't fully potty trained until she was 5 or almost around that point. She just had her own timing with her body and sensory things. And so I was like, oh, there's no potty training. It's like requirement. Sign me up, right? And so that was sort of my first. And Arizona was not yet diagnosed with autism. Certainly, we were starting to call around like pediatrician, there's something going on. I'm not sure. Please help us. But there wasn't an official diagnosis. So I was like, okay, well, she should be okay here. I'm 5 minutes away. So, let's see how this goes. And so that was my first experience with her being around other kids, really only from 9 to 12, Tuesday and Thursday. Sometimes I would go early and observe her in the yard. And that's when it became even more obvious. Like she's kind of, doing her own idea all the time. You know what I mean? Like there's no circle time. She's over there. When they call the kids in from outside time, she's over there. You know what I mean? So just she had words and she was able to, express herself with, language, and she couldn't respond, So it was a very sort of confusing, tricky time of observation for me. I just was so confused about my child.
And then how did you start that process of getting a diagnosis?
Yeah. So one of my sisters who had some kids at the time was having this conversation with me about, my concerns. And she's like, Susanna, I think you need to have her checked out or something, something's different. And I was like, I know, but I don't even know what to do. And she said, why don't you start with your pediatrician? And so I started with my pediatrician, and I will say that it was almost like hitting a brick wall because he was like, well, no, I mean, she walked at 12 months, sort of went through the markers of like milestones that, pediatricians look for in terms of, normal development, right? Typical development. And Arizona had hit all those markers. So I, was like, yeah, but there's still something different, no, stop it. You're a first-time mom. You're just worrying too much. Get a nanny. You know what I mean? Like you're too anxious, like stop it. And I really felt like, again, this shame over me, like, oh gosh, I need to relax. I've been hearing this my whole life, but now maybe I really need to relax. Right. But yet and still, like this gut feeling inside of me, I just had this intuitive sense like something else is going on here and I need some answers. So I remember just calling him again, and literally as he was trying to just calm me down and just say, stop worrying, like here's the checklist and here's your daughter, I just burst into tears. And I was like, Dr. P, I need your help so badly. I am so concerned. I just need some sort of like professional. I don't even know who it is. Is there like a developmental I didn't even know, right? And so finally, because I was like sobbing hysterically, he finally gave me the number to a developmental pediatrician. He was like, okay, I guess if you need this to help calm your fears, go for it. And, best of luck. Right. And so that's when, 6 months later, when I was finally able to get an appointment, right. Because the wait list was so long. And, even with my tenacious skills of like calling every day, hi, has there been a cancellation? It still took quite some time. So that's when Arizona was officially diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder, sensory processing, praxia, all of these different fun, words that I knew nothing about. But that even took a while because there were multiple appointments, assessments, observations. I would say when Arizona was 2 years and 7 months old is when we got the official diagnosis. And so that's when it was just like, okay, go time, right? Go time. She's young, early intervention, therapies, get her connected with the regional center. I mean, it was just like, go, my full-time job for the next couple of years, So on the one hand, I was so grateful to receive some sort of I don't know, roadmap, I guess, a little bit in terms of, okay, so there are therapies that I need to get Arizona, involved with right now. And so that felt really good for me because it felt like, okay, now I can actually do something that can be helpful and supportive. And yeah, it continued on from there and has actually not stopped since. We're still, different things look differently now, but we still have lots of support. And I am constantly advocating. I was advocating for her this morning with her school counselor, in terms of getting her in, the appropriate classes with the right support and accommodation. So yeah, it is nonstop. But that journey, I will say again, so unexpected. I felt like, deer in the headlight, deer in the headlights. Like, what am I doing? I don't know, but let me just keep moving one foot in front of the other.
Yeah, and I really appreciate your candidates with that. There are so many families that are either just starting this process or vigorously shaking their head as they're listening to you, because there's something to be said about that intuition, that gut feeling of, I know something's not right. And there's times where you get an answer and you're like, I still don't think that one's right. And so really listening to your gut as to and being that advocate for your baby and asking the questions. And I've heard many times that just you go to your pediatrician and it's like, okay, for whatever reasons. And it's hard, right? And it's hard. We love our pediatricians. It's hard. And then getting into a specialist, especially a pediatric specialist, takes time. So the whole process, and you get on waiting lists, and if you need neuropsych testing or just any type of sensory processing testing or whatever it is, that takes time, and you're going from one to the other, and it's exhausting and it's overwhelming. But it is such a relief once you do have that roadmap. Once you say, okay, this is it, and you kind of know, I think when you get that answer, you're like, yes, that fits my kid. That I understand. And then you can say, okay, so here's what we're looking at. I'm always such a list person, so I like that. I'm like, all right, this is what we're looking at. All right, let's find the people. Let's set up the schedule. But it's a lot. So what do you do? What do you recommend for parents that are exhausted? Because like you said, it is a full-time job, especially if you're doing multiple therapies per week. And if you're balancing family life and you're balancing work or all of it, you get emotionally, physically drained and exhausted. So do you have anything for parents that you think, what, folks that are going through a situation and they're exhausted, these are the things to ask for, look out for, kind of that self-care?
Yeah. Yes, that self-care, like the real sort of soul care, like that inner, what is it that I, Susanna, need right now in this moment? And I think it can shift and change throughout your day, throughout the various seasons of life. I will say that I always like to tell my clients and community that I think we need to start with compassion for ourselves, like just this overwhelming, imagine compassion is like water rushing down over, like just, enveloped in compassion for ourselves. And even to just start there and just say to ourselves, like, Susanna, it is so understandable that you feel so exhausted and overwhelmed and hopeless, and you haven't taken a shower in a couple of days, and forget about, any sort of exercise. And, those donuts were so delicious for dinner. I mean, and so just having this compassion of like, it's okay, sometimes surviving is a feat. And it's also okay to seek out and look for little sort of glimpses or glimmers or slivers of whatever joy can be found in my life right now, and just, starting with the compassion and then just starting to seek out, by the way, I'm a huge list person too. I love that. I write everything down. Pen and paper is always right by my side. I start thinking about what would feel really supportive for me. During those days with tons and tons of therapies, I actually found respite in the waiting rooms of those therapies. Like we would have 50 minutes, 50 minutes of whatever therapy. In the last 10 minutes, I would be, downloading with the occupational therapist or the speech therapist or the behaviorist or whoever it was to, understand my to-dos. What are we working on? Goals, what can I assist with? And, continuing these practices at home. But those 50 minutes, I had my journal with me all the time. I had a book that I was reading. I was like, I'm not going to do anything other than, maybe I would take a walk around the office building a couple of times. There was this one therapy center where there was this beautiful park across the street, and I would just sort of clear my head and walk around for maybe like 20 minutes and then come back and have some time to just sit and decompress. I rarely like to use those times to run any sort of random errands. I was like, this time is for me. And sometimes I had 2 to 3 hours per day of that waiting room, like with the cozy couch, sometimes I brought a little blanket. I mean, I really sort of set up shop to having the intention of like, this is going to be this is my Susanna time. In fact, I would sometimes be so annoyed if there was like another, parent in the waiting area that just wanted to keep chat. Some days I was so happy to like, just commune, right? And, we're doing this therapy. It's working so well. How's it going for you? Like, definitely there were those moments too. But other times it was like, I wish that I don't talk to me. I am not available. So yeah, it was, those little moments really got me through, I have to say. And again, I am a big journaler. I've been journaling my whole, since I was 13 years old, actually. And so I just find that to be the most, outside of tennis and whacking the ball, therapeutic in terms of just getting my feelings out, just right there in the moment. And there were so many feelings. I mean, so many tears on those pages too. So yeah, I mean, we can't be so hard on ourselves. We are not, superhuman. We are mortal beings, and we just sometimes have to give ourselves so much grace. Like, this is what I'm available to do today, and tomorrow, the sun will rise again and we'll see what self-care, soul care is going to look like for me tomorrow. And I'm going to check in with myself multiple times a day. What does self-care look like for me in the next, 10 minutes, in the next, 3 hours? Oh, I'm going to make myself a delicious lunch, whatever it is, right? So, yeah.
Yeah. And I'm hoping people, you just really said a lot of things in there that were incredibly beautiful and terrific reminders for us parents that are just doing this hard work and losing sight of those tiny moments that may be 50 minutes. They may only be 1 minute, one day, but you're right. So hopefully that is, I'm sure, has resonated with folks that are listening. Can you share your personal experience with the IEP process? I know we're going from healing to IEPs, kind of a little bit all over, but I'd love to hear what your journey was like in terms of getting an IEP and kind of what advice would you offer to parents that are really just starting this or wondering, should they request an IEP, that kind of thing. And I know Arizona was little, but there are parents that are listening that their kids are older and trying to figure out what direction to go into.
Yes, absolutely. And an IEP can be available to anyone from the age of 3, right? Here in the state of California, at least, age of 3 up until 22, I think. I'm not sure the exact numbers, but the exact ages, but yes. So just to even know that you can ask for an IEP for your child at any time during their sort of, educational journey. For me, it was a little bit fed to me because I was already, in the trenches with Arizona, with the therapies and the support, got Arizona into the Westside Regional Center here in Los Angeles right before she turned age 3, which is sort of like this magical, time that, they're like, get in before she's 3. I'm like, I'm trying, So from there, it was just like, I had the messaging like, okay, so Arizona can get support at some of these, schools now, the public schools in the area at the age of 3 onward. And I was like, what? Did you say free therapy? And so that was, my first, sort of foray and introduction into the IEP world, which I knew nothing about up until that point. And so Arizona's first IEP was right when she was 3, and now she's 18. And sometimes we've had multiple IEPs in a year. So I've been to probably 20 plus IEPs for Arizona at this point. And I will say that even though things are different now, I feel a little bit more confident in advocating and even knowing what to ask for. It's just another opportunity for you to realize, that you know your child the best, right? You absolutely do. And so that instinct, that gut feeling, maybe you have a partner who has a different view. So this is an opportunity for you both to sit down, or community or whoever is helping you raise your child, about just like, okay, so tell me, let's observe and describe this child, and so really sort of coming in together with some sort of plan of like, this is who this child is. One thing I think is really important for us to understand is the intention of the IEP. And the intention, our intention, is to basically be able to receive and access, as many services as possible, the most, supportive services as possible for our child's needs, and I think that, we can go into an IEP and want to just talk about all of the phenomenally great and amazing things about our child. And that is so wonderful and necessary, and just keeping in mind, there might be some, talk about, deficit, based language regarding your child's development. But in terms of actually getting an IEP, like if you feel like, okay, my child there's something going on. I have a client right now who's, really struggling because their child got a diagnosis one place, but didn't get the diagnosis somewhere else. And so it's really hard for the school to understand, like, how are we going to, what's the eligibility here, And so my feedback for her was like, yeah, this is when we get to be tenacious. This is when we get to step up and just keep asking, keep asking, keep asking. I always suggest asking from a place of like, I really need your help. I am so confused. I'm struggling. I'm worried. And by the way, this is mostly all true, Actually, it is all true. I am overwhelmed. I don't know what to do. And can you please help me? As opposed to like sort of demanding, this is what I need, right? So I just find that this has been so much more helpful. Like it has been, I've been more successful in just, asking for help. Now, I also will go into a school and look for the assistant principal, and wait at the front desk and come back again and come back a third day and come back a fourth day. Hi, me again. Here's some bagels. Here's some cookies, whatever, because I just need your help. I just don't know what to do next. I really need your help. And so I feel like it is, it is the tenacity, it is the squeaky wheelness that is all within us. Even if it's not our personality, we just kind of have to fake it till we make it, because if we're really keeping in mind the goal here, which is to get the support, by the way, that is available to us, right? That is available to our child. We have to ask for it though, most of the time. All of the supports that my daughter Arizona has now, I have had to fight for, and not in a way of like, dukes up, like, but in terms of just like, no, that's great. Thank you. And she also needs a one-to-one aid. Well, we'll do a functional behavior analysis, the first day of school. Thank you. And, with all due respect, we will not be here on the first day of school without a one-to-one aid, so I just, we this is the time for us to just fight for our rights. I'm so passionate about this because, it really is available to all of our kiddos. We just have to keep asking and asking and asking.
Let me ask you this. As you're preparing, whether it was your first one or now that she's 18, for an IEP, how do it can be, again, overwhelming as a parent that something's challenging, or that different areas of school are challenging. What kind of advice do you give for parents to help kind of prioritize their concerns or to be able to get their concerns out that they can then share in their parent input statement for the IEP or preparing for that IEP.
Yeah. And I think the key word is preparing. I'm a big, big, big proponent of just preparing as much as possible, as much as you can. Again, it's overwhelming. It takes time. We have other life things happening and responsibilities. And typically we have time, we have a scheduled IEP, and it's usually not something that's like, oh, we can have an IEP tomorrow, right? It never really happens that way. So we will have the time. And so what I like to do, going back to my lists, is just, again, sort of like writing down all of the, sort of characteristics and behaviors and, responses to, different stimuli or situations or events. Then, if your child is already enrolled in some sort of like center-based program or, preschool, even if it's, one day a week or any sort of like social, educational, academic group, whatever it may be, mommy and me group, ask the people around you, right? Ask the people around. So, I'm really prepping for X, I'm prepping for my IEP, and I would love your feedback on fill in the blank. I asked my friends, I asked my, siblings, my parents, extended family. I was just like, listen, I will not take anything personal. My goal here, right? Well, sometimes I did take it personal, but our ego gets in the way. But I was like, okay, focus on the finish, Susanna. And yeah, just, getting as much information. I absolutely feel like you can just write notes and notes and notes on just observing your child for a couple of days. If they have therapists, occupational therapists, speech therapists, you quickly realize that you actually have a little team, And then, I think it's also important to, again, if you're going in with a partner or, an advocate or someone who's with you, to be on the same page in terms of, okay, what is our intention? Like literally saying that my intention for this meeting is, the first IEP that I went to, well, I've been to, again, all of them, but the first one, I actually opted to take my mother. My husband at the time, we have since divorced, but at the time, he was a little bit like kind of in denial, having his own feelings in response to everything that was going on. And so I just felt like, I need my mommy, I need like my nurturing, cuddly, cozy mommy, And she came with me. My parents lived in California at the time. They've since moved to Ohio, but it was so beautiful. And, I remember, like, this is so emotional. It's like, you go around the table and they ask you to just introduce yourself. And I couldn't even do that, right? I said, sorry, I'm Susanna. I'm the mom, right? And just tears. And my mom said, and I'm Sandy. And I'm the grandma. And she started crying. And I mean, and I just want all you beautiful families out there to know, like, I'm an expert at this by now, and it's really hard, Yeah. It's an emotional journey, and you will get through it, and we are getting through it, and you are not alone. I also found it really supportive in IEP meetings to bring a picture of Arizona, just so everyone there could just be like, oh, right? I also love to bring food. So I would bring like bagels or like, cookies, nothing elaborate, cookies from like Vaughn's that are the, $5 cookies. And, I think people just, want to help you, when there's some personalization. Most of the people in that IEP room do know your child and some don't, right? So well, right? So it just depends on the year and who's available, and it goes on and on. But yeah, I will just say, man, whew, right?
Bringing somebody to the meeting is key. And also bringing your favorite drink. I'm a coffee drinker, your water, just something. It's almost like a little warm binky for me. And then, and you have somebody, and it's even like when you go to a doctor's appointment, if it's a significant appointment, to have somebody there that can hear, that is not I don't want to say emotionally invested, because we all are emotionally invested, especially if it's your, the grandma or auntie or whomever, but it's just somebody that can kind of separate a little bit to say, all right, here are our notes, here's our plan. And I always explain to parents, you're thinking about bell to bell. And so asking, if you observe your kiddo and you see, so whether it's executive function or processing or sensory that you see outside of the day, being able to translate that, like this would be an impact when they're transitioning in the hallway, or this would be an impact when they're trying to turn in their work, or if the fire alarm goes off. Like, those are things to think about going into that meeting, whether it's your first or 100th, wherever you are, but thinking about your kid and those times, like I said, fire alarm or safety drills, or when you have a substitute teacher, like what is the contingency plan? Like, what are we doing for that? Because sometimes those are overlooked in meetings. And I think it's incredibly important to have those conversations if they apply to your kiddo. And what would we do?
Yes, that is exactly right. I mean, I have all kinds of accommodations in Arizona's IEPs, including understanding the fire alarm schedule ahead of time, right? Her one-to-one aide literally will take her out of the classroom 10 minutes before, right? So yes, I mean, nothing is too little to ask for, really.
Right.
Yeah.
And also remembering that you can ask for parent training for yourself if you need to. That can be put into the IEP, but also staff training. So there's times that we'll ask for families that I support, right at the beginning of the school year, we're going to do a staff training for this student because of X, Y, and Z. And it could be a 10-minute or it can be longer, just so that everybody knows. Everybody knows. Even it could be the lunch folks that are serving lunch, or the custodial folks.
Absolutely.
Just so people know that are going to be seeing your precious baby and interacting with your baby, that they know this is how I can better support to make a better day so that we can all have a better day.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. It takes an entire village all the time. Absolutely.
What is like one resource? We're kind of talking about different things you can put in an IEP and things to think about. Is there a particular resource or comment that's popped up that you're like, this is gold, why doesn't everybody know about it?
Yeah. So I think that sometimes we forget, and especially if our child is, connected to the regional center, and certainly if you're having an IEP, there is a school district, support behind, everything. But, with the regional center, there are so many like free resources that, I think we sometimes forget about in terms of advocacy, in terms of having someone at the IEP with you. You don't have to like go out and hire an attorney necessarily, right? There are parent support folks who are just available throughout your area that would be so happy to support you, other like sort of caregiving parents. I have found this amazing resource for moms specifically called weareBraveTogether.org. And it's an executive, my friend Jessica, well, she's now my friend, but I met her. She's the executive director and founder. She has 3 kiddos, one who has a rare chromosomal disorder. And so she is, she built up this group of supportive mamas around the world. I think there's like 2,700 of us now. Yeah. And she's an amazing resource, but there's, a Facebook page. We're always like on there asking for hints and tips before we're walking into an IEP. There are moms that have kiddos that are adults, some that are 3, 4, 5, some that have, all kinds of like medical, all kinds of unique needs and disabilities, right? So that to me has been just like a go-to in terms of whenever I have a question about, guys, I'm looking for like a social skills sort of support thing for my daughter who's 18, who likes these things and wants to be around other girls, right? So certainly it has been very helpful with regard to, hints and tips and like life hacks when it comes to getting what we need for our kiddos. Yeah. And especially in the IEP process, for sure.
I'm going to put that in our show notes and check it out myself. I have not heard of that, but I love the title and I love the camaraderie and then just being able to ask questions.
Yeah.
Right. So reflecting on your journey, what are some of the most important kind of lessons that you've learned about parenting Arizona?
I feel like she has taught me to be present and awake to this life. I feel like if she hadn't been my daughter, if we hadn't had this sort of joint parallel experience of living together as human beings on this earth, I feel like I would have been much more numb to life. I think that I would have just sort of rotely gone through the motions of, okay, well, I need to get my kid into this school, and then, they need to have good grades and, be well-rounded and play some sports and play the piano and, kind of the way that I was raised. So I would for sure be a tiger mom. So like, I grew up in an Asian household. My dad is Asian, Taiwanese. My mom is American. And so I feel like I would have absolutely been like the worst, strict, annoying parent wanting my child to like overachieve in every single area of life. And because that wasn't going to be, my path, I had to learn a different way. And I'm so grateful that I have. I think that I am, again, like just every moment, even driving my daughter to school this morning, she's a junior. She has 2 more years left in high school. And even though she wants to listen to, loud K-pop in the car, I'm like, okay, so you know what? I am going to enjoy that I'm able to drive my child to school. I am going to have my black tea when I get home, which is my warm and fuzzy binky. And I am going to take a breath and just sort of be in this moment and appreciate what is. That is something that I wish for every parent to be able to access. It is available to us. Sometimes it feels impossible to access. I know this because most of the time I feel that way. But coming back to that intention just reminds me like, okay, so I have this moment. This is what is real and true for me right now in this moment, and everything is okay in this moment. So yeah, I love all of the opportunities for me to awaken. I'm like, okay, I'm done awakening. I would like to chill out now and relax, please, with a different kind of drink. Thank you. So yeah, that's what I would share.
How did you name your book? I love the title.
Yeah, I love this question. So the title that I originally had that I was like so obsessed with that came to me, as an epiphany when I was on the acupuncture table getting treated for anxiety and depression when Arizona was 6 years old, was the original title was A is for Arizona, because all of her diagnoses happened to start with the letter A, so autism, allergies, asthma, auditory processing disorder, eventually ADHD, anxiety, everything started with the letter A. And I was like, we're doing all these therapies and, treatments for the symptoms of all of these diagnoses, but really, A is for Arizona. A is not for autism and ADHD, all of these things, right? So I had this great epiphany and I was like, this is brilliant, right? And then now, as Arizona is getting older, as I'm writing this book, she's like, yeah, I don't really want you to write anything about me. And I was like, this is my story. This is not your story, and, but ultimately, the book as it is now, as like inside the book, I just list Arizona as the letter A, that was sort of our compromise. And then I said, okay, well then if that's going to be the case, and I honor that, I respect that, I honor that, I would be grateful if you could write the foreword, and you could let readers know, what are some of your thoughts as they go into this book. And one of the things that she said in the foreword was, I just want people to know that your true self is enough. Oh. And so that's where it came from. So she said it. They're her words. I know. Beautiful. I can't. So I look, and she embodies that. She believes that. She's so like, I like me, and I'm just like, I need that.
We need more of that in the world.
Yes. So every time I see the title, I'm like, yeah, okay, Susanna, your true self is enough. Yes, it is. Absolutely. You are whole. You are complete. You are perfect. exactly as you are.
Beautiful soul and a beautiful sentiment.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So kind of as we wind down, what is one thing that I didn't ask you or didn't know enough to ask you that I should have asked?
Let's see. Well, I think, people, who are listening might consider that I have everything figured out. And I will be the first to tell you that I absolutely do not. At every, I've been doing this for a while, but everything is always changing. Things are shifting, they're changing. I would say that probably my biggest lesson in all of this is to learn how to be flexible and to learn how to go with the flow without sort of attaching or connecting to anything. But what I also want people to understand and know is that life is tricky. Life is messy. It's okay to fall apart multiple times a day. Most of the time, I feel like a hot mess. And I am saying that in full transparency and vulnerability. Like, it's okay if you need to scream at your child, sometimes, you have to raise your voice. So we can't access like this conscious parenting paradigm every single second. And that is okay. It is absolutely okay. We have every moment possible to be able to start over. Like I said, the sun will rise again tomorrow morning, right? And hopefully we will rise too. And we'll be here, and we'll be able to choose many things. We have agency over so many things. But one of the things that we need to also understand is that we are human beings. We are allowed to play. We are allowed to cry. We are allowed to check out. I don't have it figured out. And, the answers are all within us. So.
I always say sleek on the outside, messy on the inside.
Yeah. Ugh. So messy. So messy. Yeah.
My final question, if you had a billboard for parents with a tip, what would it be and why?
Oh gosh. Okay. I will tell you this. It would be find your joy.
Yep.
Period. Find your joy. Everything else will come after that in terms of the to-do list, logistical things, I say find your joy, at least have that to be your intention that I am seeking out joy. I'm looking for it. I don't know where it is or what it looks like. I can't access it, but just to have that intention, find your joy. You're in all the little moments, big moments, whatever it may be that will keep you going.
So important. Important. All right, Susanna, this has been just a pleasure. You're so easy to talk to. And I know this conversation is going to resonate with folks that are listening, again, wherever they are in this process, starting at midway, feeling like towards the end, but really helpful. So I appreciate your time. And we're going to put how to get your book and the link in the chat and all of that, or in the chat, in the show notes, all the places. So thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Wendy. And thank you for all of your offerings as well.
You bet. Thanks for tuning in to the Special Ed Strategist. Remember, the right support can make all the difference. As your dedicated Special Ed Strategist, I'm here to guide, collaborate, and empower your kiddos' success. Keep igniting potential one step at a time. Until next time, take care and keep strategizing. Today's episode is brought to you by Learning Essentials and our Cracking the Code to Special Education eligibility course. Empower your advocacy, erase confusion, and unlock the services your kiddo deserves. Learn more at learningessentialsedu.com.